Well, there's massive potential with seaweed when we're talking about Asparagopsis taxiformis. So this is one species that grows mostly in Australia, but kind of in the Mediterranean as well. I think also in South America, from what I understand. So warmer climates. So there is this ability within this seaweed where there's an accumulation of some compounds, um, and these are haliforms, so like bromoforms and that, and they actually mitigate, they inhibit the methanogenic pathway in methanogens that colonize the rumen. So they are a direct inhibitor of methanogenesis. So this is a
Sorry, does that mean that if it's a direct inhibitor that you would potentially produce less methane at the end of it?
exactly, and we're talking low inclusion rates. Like this is a remarkable discovery. The first report was Rob Kinley. I believe when he was still in Canada, he's now down in Australia. And so they're actively growing this stuff. It's difficult to grow, which is part of the
Mm-hmm.
issue. And now you've got all the QC issues around keeping things the same, making sure there's the same amounts of bromoforms and that. So there's many challenges. And one of the biggest issues with seaweed, of course, is that it's coastal, right? So how do we get it from the ocean to where
Mm-hmm.
livestock production occurs? In Australia, it's not that big a deal because most of it's happening around the coast. You look at somewhere like Canada, most of that's happening in Alberta, Saskatchewan, right? So we now have to get that seaweed into the interior where the production's occurring. But regardless, there's some amazing innovation happening in that space. Can we inhibit methanogenesis directly, and that solves your methane problem? The other way to look at it, though, is that seaweed is a potential feed additive. Like it can replace different feeds. So most of what is fed to, apart from grass, but when we start to get into feedlots and winter, for example, like
Mm-hmm.
most of what's
Mm-hmm.
fed to cattle is grain that was intended for
Mm-hmm.
human consumption, but is just not up to snuff, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, the truth is, though, that food or that land could be dedicated to cultivating crops for human consumption, right? So if we can
Mm-hmm.
offset some of that with seaweed, for example, there's a way to increase the, uh, the efficiency of how we're using land to generate food.
So just so I understand this correctly, if the seaweed has some sort of microbe or microorganism that looks like it's inhibiting that sort of methane production
Well,
pathway.
it's a chemical, but yeah,
Oh, it's a
yeah,
chemical. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that only happens remarkably. It only happens in a couple of species that have been found. Now there is some other anti-methanogenic properties in seaweed that's been found. Some of them grow in Canada, some of them in the North Atlantic, and so there's some other potential there. But that one I'm referring to, that only happens with Asparagopsis taxiformis and one of its relatives, Aromatis. So it's quite curious, right? How that discovery was made and the potential that's there. But other seaweeds that actually can be naturally harvested off, Canadian waters. There's other ways to use these in animal production and other forms of agriculture, whether it's for biofertilization, for
Mm.
example. So
So that we're still studying to confirm whether the seaweed around Canadian coastal waters can also result in the same kind of methane inhibition.
well, the research is suggesting that it's not to the same level, but there are other
Okay.
things. There is potential to reduce it some, and then we don't understand why. So that's where the research is going, is can we actually start to get down to the heart of the matter here and figure out, what are the differences between these two forms of inhibition? And that's one of the things that we're actually studying, and many other groups are studying that as well.